Hello, my name is Greg McKay. I'm the chair of the Australian SRV Association. This recording is of a presentation at the Australian SRV gathering held online 22nd of July 2022. The event was hosted by ASRVA, which is the SRV safeguarding group in Australia. We held the gathering for several reasons: to help strengthen the Australian SRV community, to further foster a community of practice identity, to strengthen collegial relationships among and between members of the community, and to focus on SRV in action, its everyday use. We hope you find these presentations helpful, and we again thank presenters.
So this session is, we welcome Jack and Jan Kruger, and it's titled Picking Goals, How SRV Guided a Family's Planning in Supporting Their Son into His First Work Role. So I asked Jack and Jan what their favourite role is that I could use, and Jan nominated that Jack's most important role is being her biggest teacher, and she said that she is constantly learning from him, and I'm sure we will all learn from him today. Jan I described as a peeler and a seeker, not an appealer, a peeler. So she peels back the layers. She talked about how she uses SRV and passing to see what is offered, to see beyond the shininess. So beyond the shininess of the latest person-centered thing, what does SRV and passing tell us what's really important? And her most important role is finding valued roles for relationships to flourish. So I would like to welcome Jan and Jack speaking to us from Ngunnawal country. And just a reminder that the SRV themes to listen out for are in this session: valued roles, role communicators, and the developmental approach, particularly competency enhancement. So welcome Jan and Jack. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Prue, for that very warm welcome. Jack isn't here with me in person, but you will certainly be hearing from him. I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I also want to acknowledge everyone here today striving to get the good things in life for the vulnerable people in our community. When we have like-minded people coming together, that's when we feel things are possible. So thank you, everyone. So yes, I think I've heavily been influenced by Dr. Wolfensberger in titling my presentation with a very lengthy title. So that's probably my first shout out to SRV. But knowing that Jack was going to be busy today, we ended up recording his introduction. So I will hand over to him now.
Hi, my name is Jack Kruger. This is my family. They do about me. I'm Emma Dahilskia, CrossFit member, Oxtail player, bagwire, driver. When I was fully included at school, I'm business owner at phoning with my cousin soul. I had to go to Poland. We had a discovery gathering. My circle made a list of my interests, list of my conditions of success, ideas for work roles. I became a soccer game leader at 15. I did work experience in year 10. I did ASPA and living in 12 at University of Kruger. Now I work at Gilman's house and I'm just a good care. Thanks for listening. Hi, my name.
Okay. So I hope through Jack's introduction, you got a sense of who Jack is. We deliberately supported Jack to use role language in introducing himself as opposed to just talking about the activities he enjoys. And this was one strategy that we learned from social role valorisation to help shift how people perceive Jack and identify with him through potential shared interests. We also use photographs that help sort of show Jack in the role. So going with that philosophy that people needed to see it to believe it. And here's some more examples. So I just want to share a little bit about when I first was introduced to social role valorisation. It was when Jack was 2 years of age. I attended a family advocacy workshop. Family advocacy is steeped in SRV, but I didn't realise that at the time. I thought I'd just pretty much just found my people. They were the first people that were actually starting to talk about Jack living a typical ordinary life, just like his 3 sisters. Since then, I've attended many more workshops and study groups and conferences over the years to deepen my knowledge of SRV. As it's really helped me understand how people with disability are attributed or thrown often into a devalued status. But more importantly, what I could do to then prevent my son from experiencing the negative life experiences by supporting him to take up valued social roles. So as you can imagine, it was very empowering for me. So over the years, we've been very conscious of how people with disability are often judged based on their diagnosis. And we wanted Jack to be known for who he is, defined by his valued roles that he occupies and his interests, and not based on having Down syndrome. Social role valorisation tells us that roles happen on a continuum, as you can see here, of value within our society. And to aim for the most valorising role in order to shift perceptions was something that we paid attention to. So we knew that we had to ensure Jack wasn't thrown into the negatively charged roles that most of society would avoid, such as being the eternal child, object of pity, ridicule, burden, a menace. And instead, we went about seeking out those more highly valorised roles that Jack had mentioned in his introduction. Now, these roles, weren't just offered to us. We had to seek them out. And actually, it would be more that people were trying to throw Jack into more of the segregated settings. That's not something that most of society would want. So seeking out the valued roles was a powerful way to counteract Jack's heightened vulnerability. So Jack wasn't offered this life path, as his experience so far, quite the opposite. It has been possible through thoughtful visioning, planning, and seeking out opportunities for Jack, guided by SRV. So holding a clear vision for what we wanted for Jack's life to look like was the first step. We wanted Jack to have access to the good things in life, just like his 3 older sisters. We didn't always have a written statement like you're reading here, but we were clear in our hearts and minds of what we wanted for him. And as you can see here, Jack's vision is heavily influenced by SRV principles. So we wanted him to contribute and participate through valued social roles. We wanted him to have positive relationships in his life and follow that ordinary rhythm of life where he would find that sense of belonging and be valued and known in his local community. We also each year would sit down with Jack and the people around him and really focus on some of the roles that Jack might want to focus on for the year. And I've particularly pulled out the year 2018 because that's going to be the year that I'm going to be focusing on for today. But Jack was born in rural New South Wales, where he lived a pretty ordinary childhood. He attended the same playgroup his sisters did, and then with our strong advocacy, attended his local school. So when we moved to Canberra, when Jack was about 4, we were looking for ways for Jack to participate in his community, and playing soccer seemed like a pretty good way for this to happen, as his cousin of a similar age was about to register. So they both registered at the local soccer club. Don't know what's happening there, sorry. But when Jack was about 8, people strongly encouraged us to register Jack to play with a soccer team made up of only people with disability in a suburb outside of his local community. We asked ourselves, would this be helping Jack to get the good things in life if we registered him with this team? Is this in line with his vision? The answer was no. It would take him away from his local community, the grouping would not be typical, and certainly the age of the players was out of the ordinary, as 35-year-olds would have been playing as part of the team. Therefore, we decided to keep Jack at his local club with his sister and cousin and friends from school. It wasn't always easy for Jack to keep up with the pace of the game over the years, and he didn't always have a supportive coach. But we learnt to seek a supportive coach out, and we also went about finding ways for Jack to meaningfully participate. Soccer is very unpredictable and it often requires quick decision making. So this is where we looked for those smaller roles within the larger role of soccer player, such as sideline thrower, defender who's stuck on number 20, captain who led the team on and encouraged his team members. And you'll see here in the bottom right-hand photograph where he was part of the winning team for the season. So we soon realised by taking this approach, it really gave Jack the confidence to be part of the team, and he could do that in a meaningful way. And it also led to the possibility of Jack becoming a soccer referee, which will be my focus for the talk today. So Jack mentioned he had a circle of support in his presentation. And in this discovery gathering, some of the young members suggested Jack becoming a soccer referee. Even though Jack had played soccer for years, this was not on my radar as a possibility. I was aware that in the world of disability, people get offered employment options that are often quite limiting and lots of readiness programs for work. And whilst we were not looking at this by any means, we also didn't see this opportunity. I so often think as parents, we are blinkered from seeing the abundance of opportunities in the community. And we were certainly not encouraged by society, services, professionals to even look in the first place. So having people around us to point these out was really important. Once the idea of becoming a soccer referee was planted, we used the culturally valued analogue to understand how young people would typically take up the role of soccer referee. The information about what was going to be expected for Jack to fulfil the role was crucial to his success. We found out that the entry-level referee title was to become a game leader. We asked the young circle members what was involved in becoming a game leader, and they responded that he would have to do a certification of a 2-hour practical course. This sounded perfect for Jack. Jack's style of learning, he's a visual learner and he relies heavily on imitation of others. So it sounded like a good start. We didn't ask permission for Jack to do the course, and we didn't highlight that he had a disability. Instead, we did our research of what the course would roll out as, and we supported him to succeed by showing him some YouTube clips with what would be expected. it was actually quite funny because it was really just learning to blow the whistle was the main aim of that course, it seemed, from a sideline view. And we were very, another aspect is that we were very conscious to use the conservatism corollary. So in other words, how were we going to bend over backwards to help Jack, to provide him that potent and relevant support very much in the background to help him be successful. We were really conscious of how in-person support might throw Jack into the client role if we used a support worker, or the eternal child role if I was the one supporting him. And quite frankly, I wouldn't have been a good match anyway because my soccer rule skills are pretty bad. But we were really conscious of what the impact of the support was going to look like. So instead, we used the culturally valued analogue to understand what the role expectancies and performance were, and looked at how new game leaders were typically supported into the role. We used role communicators to guide how we assisted Jack into the role of game leader. And we did this as we learned over time that what happens is, or what we found out through other families, is that they would pay attention to one or two of these role communicators, but unintentionally neglect some others. And this was enough to make people question whether the person was genuinely in the role or not. So we made sure that we were going to pay close attention to each role communicator because we knew that this was going to convey those role expectancies. So the first of these was the setting, getting the physical setting right. And thankfully, this was pretty straightforward for us. Jack was still playing as a player when he became a game leader. So it was just obvious that this was going to be the setting where Jack would fulfill this new role of his. The clubhouse was well kept. They had an oval that was large enough to cater for many games to be played at the same time. The lawns were mown, the fields were well marked, and there was good parking. His personal appearance, looking the part, is also very important role communicator. And, you know, going by, and legitimate will tell people whether he's legitimately in the role or not. We had to make sure that he had a uniform that was well fitted and it was the same uniform as the other game leaders. You'll notice there too that he's got the logo. We also, being in Canberra, we had to make sure that the undershirt was something that would be typically worn. So we sort of looked around and asked around as to what other game leaders were wearing, because he certainly needed more than just a t-shirt. And probably most importantly was the whistle. Having the whistle was a really good communicator to people that he was in the role of a game leader. And we also, you'll notice in some of the other photographs, he was wearing a vest, and we wanted to make sure that that was well fitted, it wasn't oversized. So we're just paying close attention to what that looked like, because we know how quick people are to judge, but based on people's appearances. Language was another one, another role communicator, where Jack was using, with regards to using the language that would be needed as a game leader. But also we had to think about, well, how are we talking about Jack to others, and how are we talking to him in front of others? We knew that people were going to be paying attention to this, so we had to pull ourselves up. We didn't want that in itself to be making people question Jack's role. We knew people would be listening and watching. The social context, so who are the people was very important. And as the saying goes, we are judged by the company we keep. So making sure that Jack was going to be there with other game leaders. There was a game leader coordinator. There was administrators, the president, the treasurer, very important because they all got paid at the end of their shift. So having the treasurer there was very important. Having parents and volunteers, and most importantly, having soccer players present. Then moving into understanding what the activities were going to be. So Jack's circle members told us about the short course that Jack would need to do. We needed to make sure he had the right equipment. You can see him there carrying the equipment. He would need to be able to give instruction and demonstrate, and he would need to be able to referee. He'd set up the games and also turn up on time. Time is very abstract for Jack, so he needed a lot of support around, getting there on time, but also timing the games. So we knew that this was going to be the area that we had to pay a lot of attention to with regards to getting the support right for Jack. We understood from other game leaders and the game leader coordinator that Jack would be required to run a team of 4 to 5-year-olds, and that would be accompanied by another game leader. So there was always 2 of them with that team. And that was very much about demonstrating a new skill, and he would teach the young children that and then encourage them to do it. As you can see in that bottom photograph, he was very encouraging those little ones. Then he would move into the next game that he would be reffing, and that was for 6 to 7-year-olds. And this is where he was going to need a lot of support, because making those quick decisions on who kicked the ball out, who was throwing the ball in, was very difficult for Jack to do. So we had to sort of think carefully about who was going to support him to do that, because for that particular group, they only had the one game leader doing that. They didn't have the 2, unfortunately. So we thought very carefully about that, and we wanted to seek out freely given support, age-appropriate support. And so we approached his circle member friend, Max, who was of a similar age. So that's just like a very quick example of how we use the role communicators in helping Jack achieve this role as game leader. But what I want to move into now is around what did Jack need to look competent in the role and what we paid attention to. So he was in the role, and we had paid attention to the role communicators that would convey the expectancies, the responsibilities and the behaviour of the role, and where he would also reap the privileges of the role through payment and recognition. Jack was also in the achieved role, so when people could see him in the role, they would then say that he had achieved it, he was performing it. And especially as the season went on, he grew in confidence. And I mentioned before our heightened consciousness of Jack being seen as a teenager in the role and not as an eternal child. So we had to be really careful that when he was encouraging those little 4 to 5-year-olds, that he wasn't being tipped into being seen as that eternal child, that he was very much acting like a teenager, encouraging young kids, and he did that beautifully. And then also looking for the peer support. And I'm not saying that we necessarily got this right all the time, and had we known what we know now, we probably would have customised this role for him a bit more, because he actually was really well suited for that younger age group where he wasn't required to ref the game, which was quite difficult for him to do. But most importantly, I was not his support was very important for him to be successful. Then we looked at what did Jack need to be competent in the role. So we mentioned that he did the game leader course, and he was very successful in completing that. And it was really well suited to him because he had other young people learning the role as well, so he could imitate and model from them. Had the course been very literacy heavy and for Jack to respond in a written way, we would have certainly had to make accommodations for him, but we would have still gone about it with that wouldn't have stopped us from trying to move him into this role. We just had to have the mindset that it was possible. And we certainly did have that mindset that Jack could do this. We didn't know how it was going to pan out. We didn't have the answers for everything, but we had a can-do mindset. The soccer club also had a can-do mindset, and we're really excited that Jack was going to take up this role, and we're really encouraging. And really importantly, Jack had the mindset that he was going to give it a go. We also had mentioned the role models that Jack had. So Max, his peer support that was freely given. He was there supporting Jack in refereeing the games. And I'll talk to how we may not have always got that right, but it was the least worst option. And then with the game leaders, you will have seen in some of the photographs where there was always assigned 2 game leaders for the younger cohort. And that worked really beautifully for Jack because there was always 2 of them giving the instruction. But Jack was very much seen in the role. We also had the game leader coordinator was really supportive, and we approached him knowing that Jack was going to have to teach a new skill to that younger cohort every week. We were mindful that if he was just learning about what that skill was of the morning that he was about to teach it, that would have been difficult for him. So we approached the coordinator to see if they could send through to us which skill they were going to focus on that weekend, and we would find it on a YouTube clip so Jack could practice it. So with the practice, Jack could do that through the week, and then that grew his confidence and competence in being able to be in that game leader role. And then, of course, he got to practice that every week. So his confidence grew week by week. And so this sort of feeds into that feedback loop of role circularity where others saw Jack in the role. Jack then believed that he could do the role. And then there was that loop where he strengthened his performance of the role over time and over the season. So in closing, I just want to sort of highlight that this talk was hopefully getting across to you that it was all about shifting perceptions and assumptions and paying attention to Jack's image enhancement and role expectations. We understood what the role was, and we did our best to help Jack achieve and perform those expectations with the right support. But we're always striving to make the support as invisible as possible in order not to leave people questioning whether Jack was genuinely in the role or not. As a result, Jack was in the work role as soccer referee for the season. You'll see here in the photograph, that's Max supporting Jack. I think if I can do my own critique, it would have been good if Max was in his game leader uniform. That probably would have looked better for the perception of others to help Jack sort of know that he was still in that role. He still had the whistle around his neck, but sometimes Max might run forward and leave Jack, and Jack didn't keep up with him. So, yeah, it was a difficult situation to sort of be mentoring some freely given support, but we thought that this was the best way to go about it for him. So we certainly could see that roles opened the doors to other roles. Jack went on, he only did 1 year of game leading, and because the following year he took up a school-based apprenticeship, and Jack sort of felt that one job was enough, thank you very much, as well as going to school. So he took that on, but through the game leader role, it really did give not only Jack confidence, but it also gave us confidence that Jack could be taking on the work role, and that led to many other work roles that he's taken up over the years. We recognised Jack's interest in teaching kids through that game leader role, which led us to explore Jack taking on a role at after school care as an educator, and he's now working at Government House as a household officer. And we're currently exploring another job for him. So we are using SRV alongside some other approaches, such as customised employment, and we can see the benefit of that. If we just use, say, customised employment alone, we think there would be things that would be missing, and that would be not to the advantage of Jack taking up that role in a genuine way. Jack's also studying fitness at CIT, as he's got a keen interest in fitness and training others, and we're still exploring where that might take Jack. But I hope you found this presentation helpful in understanding how we've used the role communicators and paying attention to how we can build Jack's competency with the right support that hopefully looks as invisible as possible. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan. Just looking at the comments in chat, just the depth of your presentation and the amount of detail that you have gone into in setting Jack up for success, and well done, Jack.
From Helen Neal, what would have been different if you hadn't come across SRV in a formal way?
Yes, that's a good question, isn't it? The sliding doors, you know, had he gone out of his regular community, his cousin and friends and sister wouldn't have seen him every weekend playing soccer, because that's telling them that he's capable and competent to even then suggest it as an option in the circle gathering. So look, yeah, it's a hard question to answer, isn't it? But I suspect it probably would have been different because we more than likely wouldn't have paid attention to all of the role communicators. So, yeah.
Thanks, Jan. There's another question which is about mindset. So what things did you do to help others, especially those in freely given relationships with Jack, to have the same mindset as yours?
Yeah, actually, soccer was fairly pivotal in us sharing our vision for Jack. So it was when we had a bad year with a coach that really played Jack as an extra. So it was pretty awful. You can imagine what messages that sent to not only his own team, but the opposite team that would just find out that this kid with Down syndrome is all of a sudden just being an extra on the field. Like, oh, it was awful. So from then on, we thought, right, we need to be clear with sharing our vision for Jack. And we think that really helps shift some mindsets, especially even of our friends, actually, as to how they introduce Jack, that he's not stubborn, that he's actually really keen to play soccer. He just needs to be supported and encouraged in the right way. It seemed, yeah, I just think a lot of the time people have the right mindset or they don't. And I think struck a club that was really welcoming from the get-go. And once we sort of declined that invitation to register Jack at with a disability team, I think they thought, right, okay, well, we're getting behind this. So, and they did. So I think maybe, yeah, mindsets you can massage, but I think they've got to have some kind of willingness in the beginning.
What changes did you see within your local community over time? And I guess you could, in your own mind, Jan, you could either think about the soccer community or the broader community.
Yeah, we were pretty, Jack's in Canberra, they've got sort of in our suburbs, they've got like local shops. And we were very intentional with taking Jack to the local IGA in his soccer uniform, in his school uniform, because we knew that would convey to them that he is a soccer player, he is a school student at the local school. And they would start asking questions. And I remember someone even asking one day that, oh, so will he like live in a group home one day? I'm like, no, he won't. He will live in a home of his own with people he chooses to live with. And so it just got people thinking, and he's very well known in his community and even the neighbourhood where you know, if they see something out of the ordinary, they text me. So, yeah, I think, yeah, we've been very intentional about helping people see Jack in different roles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know whether that answers the question.
Yeah. I'm hearing that that the vision is really important as setting the sense of direction, but that the range of ideas within SRV is the how in terms of you might get there. Yeah. You mentioned the support of Max and how on reflection you would have done things differently. What did you learn from that, and how would you approach it now?
I think, and I'm sure there's some other families here that this would resonate with, it takes a lot of courage to ask people to do things in a freely given way. So it's kind of like that fine line of like, we didn't want to be, you know, meeting up with Max after every, you know, soccer game going, oh, you could have done this and you could have done that. So perhaps at the beginning, we probably could have helped Max understand a bit more about what we were trying to achieve and the impact of him supporting Jack, which we didn't really do. So I think that he probably was mature enough for us to be able to do that. And also with Max's parents, who are also part of the circle. So, yeah, a bit more information for them could have been helpful, I think.
That's sounding like clarifying the role expectations for
Yeah.
Max as well.
Yeah. Not keeping it all to ourselves.
Oh. Well, thank you so much, Jan.